support. Give us a subscribe. Hello and welcome to the first video recorded with the new camera on the new computer. What do you think? Do I look better? Do I look worse? I think I look worse. You tell me. Today is day 22 of RPG A Day 2020, and the word is rare. Rare. Which makes me think of Tressure in D&D, because why not? And how ridiculous Tressure is in D&D. And what we think Tressure in D&D may not actually be what it is. Because the word we use in D&D is gold piece, silver piece, platinum piece, copper piece. And we assume that gold pieces, silver pieces, copper pieces, or coins. Coins. I have a nickel in my hand because I don't have any quarters, because quarters are an endangered species right now. Coins. So when you see, that the wizard is carrying 500 gold pieces, he's carrying 500 of these things. Where? I don't know. 500 of these would be noisy and weigh a lot. But actually, the idea of a piece of gold or a piece of eight, pieces of eight, pieces of gold, is that they would take one coin and break it off into pieces. That's where the term pieces of eight comes from, is that it was a coin that was broken into pieces. Nobody carried around coins back in that time. Coins were very rare, and it was hard to make them, and no two were the same. And, one country's denomination in coins was completely different than another country's denomination in coins. And hell, one province of the same country would often have different coins than the other province of the same country. And if this coin has the face of King Steve on it, and then King Steve dies, or worse, there's a political coup and Queen Olivia takes over. Well, Queen Olivia doesn't want any memory of King Steve around because it might incite a riot, so she will go out of her way to destroy all the coins with King Steve's face on it. So finding these things in the actual Middle Ages was pretty difficult until we invented the idea of mass processing and coming up with the idea that, we're going to have them all kind of be the same size shape, because coins would come in shapes of triangles and squares and have holes in them, and it's just a mess. But the actual idea of gold piece, silver piece, copper piece is not a coin at all. It is a piece. And then the original idea was that you'd have a bar of gold, and then you would shave off pieces of that bar of gold and give it to people. Here is your 5 pieces of gold. The gold would be broken up or shaved up, and they would just get a little chunk or a little piece, and that was worth whatever it was worth based upon weight. And the weight would equivalent an amount. So that's where you get the idea, worth his weight in gold. Then when coins were being found, well, that's where you get the pieces of 8, because a coin would be broken up into pieces. Just because these things weigh a lot, and they're hard to carry, and they make noise. And there's a lot of reasons for a dead wizard in a sarcophagus to have 500 of these stacked up at his feet. Why would you bury this guy with 500 of these? You'd spend them yourself. You'd probably spend them on the expenses of burying him. Now, yes, money has been found with the dead. Usually you can find on the eyes of the dead in many cultures a coin to pay for the ferryman, to make sure that when you were crossing the river into the realm of the spirits, the ferryman would give you a safe voyage and get you to where you were supposed to be. So, coins in the eyes. Also, there is often, throughout history, when we were dealing with executions, the person about to be executed would pay the executioner a coin for the executioner, penny for your thoughts, to make sure that the blade struck true and killed them in the first blow, especially if you were dealing with somebody getting their head cut off with an axe, as opposed to the slightly more effective guillotine. But, sometimes a guy would be, miss. You'd be tired. You'd cut off 50 heads already. And who cared if it took 2 or 3 whacks? It's actually a lot of energy to get this off with one whack with an axe, especially if the axe is kind of dull. That's why we moved up to the much more humane guillotine. Yeah. And the windpipe, that's, hard. It's hard to get through. There's a lot of grizzle. And what if it was like a fat guy or whatever? So you would often pay the executioner a coin to make sure the execution was clean, swift, and killed you in the first blow. Of course, sometimes it didn't, but he didn't care. He got his coin. So, penny for your thoughts. Strike true. Here's a coin. So sometimes you would find people buried with that coin too. Occasionally you would find people buried with a few coins to, help their transition to the next life. So it's not, and you definitely would find people buried with like their jewelry and, precious objects, food, things like that. Things that all either represented what they did in this life or to help them cross over to the next life, or so that these things would be waiting for them when they got to the next life. But rarely did you find somebody buried with 500 of these things. So when you see D&D Treasure and you're like, oh, Frogman. The Frogman has 66 gold pieces. Here's a tomb robber with 666 gold pieces. I'm just looking at some random monsters on this thing. But this guy, so here's a tomb robber carrying 666 of these things in his pocket. That is heavy. That is noisy. There's no reason to carry that much money. Once you have that much money, when are you ever going to spend it in a D&D world? What do you need 5,000 of these for, and why are you carrying 5,000 of these? I just got in an argument with somebody who was like, oh, I want to take all 5,000 gold. And I'm like, we're in the middle of nowhere. You have nothing to spend it on and no way to carry it. It's literally 5,000 of these things that you're going to try and carry. It's unbelievably heavy, unbelievably noisy, and there's nothing to do with it. Because what are you going to spend it on? What are you going to spend your make-believe money on when our characters are in the middle of nowhere? We're nowhere near a town. We're nowhere near a store. There's no way to carry it. But he insisted that I'm murder. I've got to carry it. I've got to carry 5,000 of these things. Rare. D&D Treasure makes no sense. There's no reason for this guy to be carrying 666 gold pieces. There's no reason for that guy to argue with everybody that he needed to carry 5,000 of these. If you want to give your monster treasure, make it treasure that makes sense. Things that they would actually be carrying. Food. Things that they could carry easily and spend quickly. There's no reason for this wizard on this list to be carrying 500 gold pieces. That 500 of these would be back at home someplace safe, and he'd only be carrying what he needed for the day. I mean, do you walk around every day with 500 nickels in your pocket? 500 gold pieces in your pocket? No, you do not. Rare. Let me know what you think of the new camera. If I should buy a better camera, then you should probably support me so I can afford a better camera. So support me through the PayPal, and I will talk to you later. Happy Saturday.